Our next speaker, or the first one today, I should say, is a good friend of mine, Anatolio Ubaldi. He's going to be speaking on site selection and economic development disruptions this morning. Anatolio works with organizations throughout the nation to foster enhanced economic development strategies using internet technology. His company's strategies are implemented in 39 states and serve the majority of the 50 largest cities in the U.S. GIS Planning's Zoom Prospector Enterprise's web-based GIS product is the industry standard for site selection websites in economic development. As a matter of fact, Business Facilities uses it ourselves, and it is part of our website that we employ, and I think it's an excellent product. Anyway, without further ado, I want to bring on Anatolio. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks so much. So, in light of all the things that have happened last night and are happening today, why don't we just take a brief moment of silence for those who we lost because of the weather. Thank you. So, we're really in a time of great disruption. Disruption is all around us. It's changing things in our lives. And a lot of the things that we're seeing that are disruptive are leading to things that make a big difference. One of these things that we have to address is this issue that many of us in the work that we're doing, our competitors, our colleagues, sometimes we're in situations where we're bringing a knife to a gunfight. The approaches that we used are antiquated. We've seen generational leaps that have made what we used to do not work the way that it used to work, and with the lack of success. Now, I know a lot of the people who are in this room are high-level people, CEOs, directors, but the issue is the things that got you to where you are not going to get you to where you need to go next. So I'm going to talk about some big disruptors, things that are affecting, and you actually have no choice. These things are going to affect your professions. I'll start with the first, and the first big trend is big data. Are folks familiar with this? Are you reading about it? You just kind of nod or shake your head. So I'm going to break some of the rules of speaking. Generally, public speaking, I'm supposed to be pleasant, and then you guys will like me, and then you'll listen to the things that I say. I'm going to start a really different way by poking my finger in your eye. And start by telling you you can't trust yourself. So now that I've insulted you, I'll take it a little bit further and say that the problem isn't that you're lying to yourself, it's that what you believe is wrong, and it's not your fault. Did I just say that? I can't trust myself? Things that are fundamental are wrong? Well, let me say it a different way. Ronald Reagan said, trust but verify. So there's things that we believe are true, but let's just check to see if in fact they are. Or a different way of conceptualizing it, as you may be more familiar with, is the circle of trust. And what happens when you are outside of the circle of trust is bad things. If you don't have credibility, if you aren't trustworthy, then the businesses that you are working with, you're outside and bad things happen. So back to this issue of big data, is that big data also leads to big answers. And one of the challenges about data and research and analysis is that oftentimes it's not completely obvious what you're seeing, and it takes a while to root through that data to in fact be able to see things more clearly. Let me jump outside of the work that we traditionally do to show you how there are these challenges. So the first is that we resist change when it's true. I'll give you an example. So there's an Austrian doctor who used data to calculate that they could reduce the mortality rate of childbirth from 12% to 2% of doctors and nurses wash their hands regularly before seeing patients. And this led to something that we're all very commonly aware of, which is the theory of, germ theory of disease. But at that time, this doctor was ridiculed by other physicians, and they rejected that they were the ones who were causing deaths, and that washing hands was a waste of their valuable time. So you go, okay, well, that's 1840. We wouldn't continue to do that into the modern age, would we? Well, in fact, we still don't make change. So in 2004, there's another doctor who used research to show you could have a 90% reduction in infections from central line chest catheters from hand washing. What's the result? When this was implemented, it saved 25,000 lives per year. This guy should get a Nobel Peace Prize. Has there been a doctor that saved 25,000 lives a year? So you see that even though, these are both data-based measures to be able to make big change, but do we pay attention to the data? Do we actually make these change? So I'll bring something a little bit more contemporary. By show of hands, which of these ways of dying concerns you more, and do you spend more of your time focused on? So terrorism or cheeseburger? So by show of hands, terrorism, and everybody has to vote. I understand it's the morning. I understand you'll have to vote next week. By show of hands, terrorism, hamburgers. Okay, so this is the group that sees beyond, right? So heart disease is the #1 cause of death in the USA. Terrorism is not even on the list of the top ways that you might die. And so we suffer from cognitive failings and biases. This is just mathematical in terms of behavior. We overestimate newsworthy deaths and underestimate common forms of death.
Well, that cheeseburger looks good.
I will rush ahead, as I can tell your time with us is short. So big data is everywhere. It's being used by all sorts of huge corporations to make smarter decisions. And the other issue is that we know that data is doubling every 2 years. Let's put that in context. In 2006, there was 161 exabytes of data. That'd be the equivalent of 12 stacks of books that reside from the Earth to the Sun, or 3 million times the information in all the books ever written. As of last year, there was 1,800 exabytes. So what we're seeing is that every 1.5 to 2 years, and it's likely to probably be closer to 1.5, we're creating more information and more data than ever existed before that 1.5 years in the entire history of humankind. Do you think we're going to have more data or less data? So one of the things that has been part of corporate real estate, the site selection, the economic development process, has been a history that people perceive of deals done in smoky back rooms. But the reality is there's a new reality. And that new reality is a revenge of the nerds. So whether you're economic developers, if you're CEOs, if you're site selectors, data is driving what we do because the insights make you smarter. I'll show you some examples. The first is an example that comes from Whitaker Associates, and they use predictive analytics, and it can be used differently depending on what industry or profession you're in. And the general idea is that you take data, you turn it into information, which then becomes knowledge, which becomes action, which then, of course, creates more data. This is how it's used really in practice, is that if you were, so for those of you who are business owners, you were trying to identify potential customers. You're not going to target every potential customer because there's just too many. You have limited time. So wouldn't you want to focus on those that are the most likely, based on certain characteristics, to have a predisposition to buy? Or for the economic developers in the room, you're trying to identify, well, which of the many businesses in one of my targeted industries are likely to be making a decision to expand or relocate or consolidate or something that's going to be a change where they have to make a location decision. So what they do is they look at key drivers such as change and metrics or things going on with sales or employment. And they use math. They use multiple variant regression, gradient descent, and matrix algebra so that they can create a predictive model. So you're spending more time on good opportunities versus a broad range of all possible opportunities. So predictive analysis, the whole idea is understanding information ahead of time, to be able to see things before they happen. By show of hands, how many people here are on LinkedIn? So lots. This is my social graph. Everybody here has a social graph. Everyone, whether you're on LinkedIn or not, you have a social graph. This is mine on LinkedIn, and these are all of the different groups that I'm connected to. Some are economic development, some are in the internet space, some are professional connections, some that are from other times in my life, family, friends, could be college buddies, and so on. And all of you, by the way, who are on LinkedIn, you can map your social graph. Now, the hidden value, of course, is not just who you're connected to, but who you're connected to is connected to, right? So using this Whitaker tool, this is an example where they have this database of potential prospects, and you can see how you might be connected to these people through LinkedIn. This is an example that Dean Whitaker used, and he said, oh, I'm trying to target this business, which is a prospective business, and Ray Miraflor works at that company. How am I connected to him? And the reason I learned about this is because I was that connection, because I knew Ray. Second example I'll talk about is Zoom Prospector Enterprise. And there's a number of organizations in this room that have this technology on their website, places like Minnesota, Pittsburgh, Piedmont Triad, Cedar Hill, Greater MSP. And what's coming is in New Jersey and Michigan. So when we created this technology back in 1998, it was featured in the Wall Street Journal, and it was an idea that started in one community, but now you see is across the entire country. And I'll show you some examples, or an example, of how this might help you as you are making your location decision. So you can go on to these websites, you can search for available properties, because as was mentioned in some of the other talks yesterday, if there isn't a place for you to locate, there's a big barrier to you being in that community. So you can search for properties, you can find those, and you can compare them, match them. You can drill down into a specific property, so you can get the contact information of who can help you with that. You can take a virtual tour. You can take a virtual drive down the street to see what the area looks like. You can also do market research. So for example, this is location-specific demographics. It's not like this is what it is for the city or the county, but this is what it is for that exact location. Or map the businesses that may be your potential competitors or suppliers or customers to understand where they are. And maybe you don't want to see every bit of data, you want to look at specific industries. So in this case, if we wanted to figure out all of the construction businesses, we could map just those. So you're taking preliminary research to help you make your decision and getting it very fast, including overlays of additional GIS information. Third example is economic gardening. This is an idea that came out of Littleton, Colorado, and it's the idea of helping businesses locally grow. And you can learn more on their website. But generally, it's very database intensive. It's a lot of market research, GIS, customer analysis, and so on. And this is something that's growing in a number of communities and states are implementing this. And I think it's an amazing tool to help entrepreneurs grow. One of the challenges is this issue of scaling it, because it requires a skill set that a lot of economic development organizations don't yet have. Show you another example of big data supporting small and medium-sized businesses, huge corporations. So a good example of one that's in there. So like DuPont has tons of data. They have analysts, they have consultants, they're constantly figuring out what's the best path towards success. But for many small and medium-sized businesses, they don't have access to this information. So this tool called Size Up, what it does is allows small and medium-sized businesses, or just by show of hands for the businesses that are in here, would it be valuable to you to have a better understanding of how you compare to your competition? Just by show of hands, would that help you? Right, so a lot of folks didn't have access to this. Now you can plug in, I'm just using this example, but there's plenty of examples. In this case, you plug in convenience stores. You click on My Business. What's information you would know at the top of your head? Well, you'd know what your revenue is. You plug in your revenue, and it benchmarks your business, your unique businesses, to those in your industry. So you're not comparing convenience stores to pizza restaurants, but to other, in this case, convenience stores. And it gives you maps that will show you, well, what are the places that have the best geographic characteristics? So in this case, annual revenue. So these may be places that you want to expand to, or perhaps it's a place that you want to target your advertising. Or you can see, are you in a growth industry, right? This is plotting the growth or the openings of businesses in that industry. And you can see in this case, the dips of where things went down and where they went up. And within just a few minutes, you can get a snapshot of how your business compares to all other businesses. The gauges show red tends to be not so good and green is better. Or if you're trying to identify where's your competition or suppliers or potential customers, you just plug in that information of those industries and you can see where your competitors are. You can select who am I buying from, and it will map all of that. And another benefit of this is it allows you to, and we don't typically use this for some of these types of supply chain issues, but you can shop locally. You can identify who's near you. Or advertising. So if you click on advertising, it will show the best geographic areas to advertise. And you can filter it. In this case, you're showing underserved markets. Or here you make changes, demographic changes. So say, I really want to focus on higher income areas, and it will show you where those are. Second important trend is talent attraction. So the question that is an age-old one is, which came first, the people or the businesses? I spoke with Michael Porter about some of these issues and talked to him about specifically industry clusters, which is an idea he pioneered. And I said, okay, I understand industry clusters, and it's a big topic of what is the right mix. How do we activate it? How do we make it better, more powerful? And his response was very unsatisfying. He said, well, I am a professor, and so I create these theories, and it is you as a practitioner who figures this stuff out. And I thought, thanks for nothing. But what a great thinker, and what a great position to be in that you can just say that. So he did have another theory, which I'll talk about, which is this whole idea of local industries, and local industries are those where people are buying within your area. So it's a business that's serving the local businesses. And then there are traded industries. These are businesses in your locality which are exporting their services or their goods into other places. So there was a study done. What they tried to measure was this issue of what makes a difference, what leads to a great community economically. So they measured economic development as output per person, so productivity, wages, and innovation. The other thing they measured was this issue of talent in the form of educational attainment and knowledge workers. And then an industrial measurement that Porter uses of local industries and traded industries. What the research found, and this came from the Martin Prosperity Research, was that the variation talent largely explains the variations in regional economic performance. So when you're saying, is it the people or is it the business that creates the economic advantage, they found that it's the talent over the industry. So we have, for those who in the room who are economic developers, we have traditionally chased after businesses to bring them to our community. But a new model is, in fact, that we are going to be chasing after and recruiting the talented people. There are 14 million people, approximately, that are unemployed. There's 3.2 million jobs that are available. But if we were able to fill those, it would add $100 billion. And it could reduce unemployment by 1%. This becomes the challenge of, are you getting the people, are there enough people to fill the jobs with the skills that are needed? And you're seeing how this plays out. So a very traditional model is that communities are paying companies to come locate in their area, right, through incentives. But the talent-rich economic development areas, or talent-rich communities, have turned this on its head, where in fact it's the companies that are paying the communities to be there. And this is already happening in places like New York and the San Francisco Bay Area. Very high cost, but people are willing to pay that price to access the talent in those areas. Another trend is that, especially with young professionals, they're choosing the place they live first and their job second. It is very common. I live in San Francisco, where I meet people and their story is very consistent. I came to San Francisco because I love it. Then I started looking for a job. Now that seems, for lots of folks, a very scary proposition. Because traditionally it's you find a job, then you move. But this change is happening. And this has impacts on rural communities, right? Do they have the amenities that really talented young professionals are looking for? So another question is, well then, where will the talent grow? Where will the talent come to grow the US economy? This chart, what you see is black is total US population, and the lighter colored one is the working age population. You can see World War I, World War II, due to deaths, there's a big dip in the population. Then coming out of World War II, there's the big boom in population, which is the baby boom. Now let's move forward to where we are here. And what you're seeing is those baby boomers are retiring. And they're leaving this big gap of workforce need in the economy where it's not so easy to replace. This is simply demographic. This is people say demographics are inevitable. I mean, you can tell what's coming because you can look at of the different age cohorts. So this is the challenge that we're facing right now. Just by show of hands, are people having challenges filling positions, getting the people with the right skills that you want? By show of hands, that's a challenge, right? So where will the talent to grow? The USA or Canada or wherever it is that you're from come from. So one option is the next generation. This is a very popular idea. We wait for the next generation to replace the previous one. The reality is that this is slow and people are having a difficult time filling senior and expert positions. Another option is retraining current workers. This is also a very popular idea. A lot of people like it. Your skills are becoming obsolete. We're going to retrain you for the jobs of the new economy. This also is popular, but there are certain limitations because people are having difficulty getting folks of a certain skill level into some of these higher skilled and technical jobs, but popular. Then there's outsourcing jobs, right? There's jobs that need to be filled. You take them and put them somewhere else. This is very unpopular. People don't like this idea that jobs are going to other countries. However, the market reality is this is already happening. Businesses aren't going to wait to find the right people if they can't find them. They'll find them wherever they can. So this is happening. Another option is immigration. And immigration is certainly one of the hot button political issues that nearly any any country that has great opportunities is having to deal with. We're certainly dealing with it here in the United States. But this as a political issue is fairly unpopular. But what's the market doing? The market doesn't care if it's unpopular. It's already happening. In fact, there's just a good signal in terms of the resurgence of the U.S. economy, is that this is, we're starting to see more and more numbers of undocumented immigrants coming from Mexico when there was a big lull in that. Now, whether you believe that that's good or bad, it is showing that the market responds to demand. So unpopular. So what are the other options? Well, one other option that I've come up with is robots. And this one could go either way. You know, will it be popular or will it not? What is the movie, Pixar movie? My son loves it, with the robots and the spaceship. So, WALL-E, right? So is WALL-E our future? Will robots solve this? I'm not sure, but I can tell you, because a lot of economic developers measure your success this way, is that robots generally don't create jobs. They replace them. Another issue to think about, and the business community, CEOs of lots of companies are I would say largely in unison about this issue, is that the US is an absolute hotbed of great education. All of the world sends their best people to get educated in the US. So what do we do with all of these PhDs? We force them to go back to their country so that they can create the next great company to compete with America. Is that good policy? The business community says no, but that is public policy. Third trend is small businesses and entrepreneurs. This is a report that comes from the National Governors Association, and entrepreneurship is a top priority for them. Now, when you think about the economy, we recognize that half of GDP comes from big businesses and half come from small businesses. But the value that they bring to your local economy is very different. You get higher value from local businesses, locally owned, small, medium-sized businesses. There have been studies that support this. And you can see if you had $100 in your local economy, what's it really worth if it's spent? What's it really worth to you? So Civic Economics, they did a study and they found the total impact is $68 from a local independent versus $43 from a chain competitor. And the Institute for Local Self-Reliance found that secondary spending was worth $45 for a local independent versus $14 for a big box chain. Why is this happening? It's because of the economic multipliers that you have when those dollars stay within your community versus going to a headquarters somewhere else. Now you'll see different studies with different results, but the general idea, which is persistent, is this issue that local businesses contribute more to your economy. So let's look at what happened coming out of the last recession from 96 to 2006. 93% of all net new jobs came from small and medium-sized businesses. Look at other data. So this is over the period 2001 to 2006, so a shorter period coming right out of the last recession. 100% of net new jobs came from small and medium-sized businesses. And big businesses had 4 years of job losses. Small businesses had 1 year of job losses. And smallest businesses had 0 years of job losses. Let's move forward into what happened during this current recession, or the recession that we've just come out of. Blue is small businesses, red is big businesses, and this is total job creation. So you see, of course, as the recession hit, both went down, but it was small businesses that bounced back first. Or how about net job creation? So you can still see that blue is small businesses, red is big businesses. It's small businesses that are bouncing back first. Another issue about small and big businesses is this issue of incentives. And what you will frequently find is that it's the big businesses and they make this threat. I'm going to leave the community. So what do communities do? They write a check because they want to retain them, and it's bad publicity. Small businesses rarely get these types of incentives. And that's a good thing for communities. The less incentives you give, that's more money that you can use for other programs and for your local community, residents and businesses. Now, a challenge that communities have is this issue, oh, there's all of these small businesses everywhere. How do we serve all of them? I mean, I can see them, but I'm just one person, and how do we serve all of them? And it was from this place that we started thinking about how to use data and technology to serve a broader audience. And so that's how we came up with the idea of Size Up, which is free. So any business can use it and they can help themselves. I do think we're moving toward a self-service society. You are used to doing things that you used to have other people do for you, right? Whether it be your airline. Anybody use a travel agent to make your reservations here? Okay, so Ted will have to work on your internet skills. But the rest of us, we live in a self-serve society where we do things ourselves. The fourth trend is that site selection has changed. We were trying to understand, well, what's going on with corporate real estate professionals and site selection professionals, and then how does that compare with what economic developers are trying to accomplish? We had a number of companies that participated. This is an example of a few. This is a larger list of those that participated. Perhaps there are folks, it's very likely there are people in this room that participated in this survey. And what we found is that site selectors and economic development organizations have different targets. This is very important for those of you who are trying to work with each other. So first I'll show you these are the most targeted industries of economic development organizations. When we did this first survey, we lumped manufacturing together. We just called it manufacturing. And one, which I think is a fair critique of our first research, was people said, well, manufacturing is more complicated than that. So we broke it out into advanced, alternative, and traditional manufacturing. And guess what? It was first on the first survey, and now it's first, second, and third. So big focus on manufacturing. Those industries that are in red are the areas where there's the biggest difference from the focuses of site selection consultants. So these advanced manufacturing, alternative energy, and aerospace are things that site selectors are less focused on than economic developers. Let's flip it and say, okay, well, what are the industries that site selectors are focused on? Well, the top ones for them are corporate headquarters, traditional manufacturing. That's good, that's where there is overlap. Distribution wholesale, trade, call centers, finance, insurance, business services. The ones, again, that are in red is where there's the biggest difference of what economic developers are focused on. So why is this important? It's because if these are the industries that you're focused on, well, you've got to figure out, who do I need to work with who can help facilitate this? Or do I need to go directly to the businesses? Or what are the places? Because traditional ways that you may have accessed projects before, or even for those who are the site selectors in the room, you may find that economic developers, their mission is not to focus on what you're focused on. May I have a volunteer to answer the next question without even knowing what the question is? Who's feeling confident today? All right. And your name is? From Phoenix. Robbie from Phoenix. Robbie from Phoenix, by the time a long list of locations is selected, how much more have corporate real estate professionals communicated with an economic development website compared to that organization itself? Is the answer 4%? Is the answer 17%? Or is the answer 33%? Robin, don't help him on this one. 33 is the correct answer. Round of applause for here. And and you win an award. This is the top 10 things economic developers say. So, what the data shows, blue is when they actually make personal contact with economic development organizations. Green is when they visit the website. So what you're discovering is that a lot of research is happening online, and communities are getting eliminated before they even knew they were in contention. And these are the types of things for the economic developers that these site selectors value on your websites. Demographic reports, labor force incentives, major employers, maps, land sites and buildings inventory. Another thing that we found out comparing from our first survey is that in general, site selectors are having less contact. So these are the different phases of site selection from beginning to confirming information I've already gathered and so on. So different phases is that there's actually less contact being made, period. Why this is happening, there's different people speculating. Is it that economic development organizations haven't provided the information? Is it that site selectors are finding this other places? Are they working in different industries? So the other issue is that there is an urban myth, and it was perpetrated by a really wise and wonderful guy, Ted Levine, who started Development Counselors International, and he said, there are 1,500 site selection deals each year, and there's 15,000 economic development organizations chasing them. And it made it into the Wall Street Journal, and then everybody believed it was so. And it sounds ideal, right? Scarcity, everybody's killing each other over these projects. So it's good news, but people asked Ted, well, where'd you get that statistic? He said, I just pulled it out of the air. It sounded great. So what does the data show? The data shows that, in fact, there are 750,000 businesses that need new facilities each year. This does not include any relocations. This is new and expanding businesses. And so one of the things that people believe is, okay, it's just only going to be the boutique site selection firms that are doing all these deals. Well, how can 22 companies approximately do 750,000 deals? Well, they can't. It's just a mathematical impossibility. And so communities have missed a lot of opportunities, which is that they don't, in today's society, don't always have to go through intermediaries, if you ever did. And in fact, there's no gatekeepers. And the ways to reach these businesses is ever expanding, and new opportunities are showing up. I'll give you a perfect example. And how shall I do this perfect example? Somebody with their camera, if you could just take a picture of the room, I can add this to my slides. So let's look at Business Facilities Live Exchange. You guys were in meetings. I think this is part of like this new generation of how businesses are connecting with locations and the consultants who can help them along their way in the process. So here we're using a matchmaking and math and algorithms to find and put people together in the right ways. I was watching the meetings and I heard, it's really interesting to me, the feedback where there's a community who said, oh, I never would have known about this project had I not been here to talk to this business. And then on the other side, the business saying, I just found a community that I think really could work, and I didn't even know about that community before being here. So if you haven't, in this case, I know that Allison is an excellent economic developer and that she can make deals happen in her community. And that's because I know her. But now, through this venue, she's been able to meet other businesses, and they now know what I know, which is that she's exceptional. Fifth trend, there's fast and chaotic change. So I'd like to ask you guys to name this country. It's the richest in the world, has the largest military, center of the world business and finance, strongest education system, world center of innovation and invention. The currency is the world standard of value and has the highest standard of living. The name of this country is USA, America. Actually, this is England in 1900. Change happens, right? So we believe that because things are so today, that they will be so in the future. I think this gets to Ed's concerns, right? Things happen, and your position in the world can shift. So the challenge for us is we're trying to prepare our communities for the future economy when we can't even anticipate what the economy will look like next week. I'll just give you a few examples. I'll just say words. Europe, housing, energy, elections, war, corporate scandal, and I added this one last night, natural disaster. So what happens when I have no idea what that trend line is going to look like? Or how about the jobs context? So here's the promise. The promise is if you work hard, you do well, go to college, you will get a good job. All of us have been under that. Like, this is the way to achieve the American dream. But here's the reality. The reality, which is, I'd say, widely known, is that technology and globalization have reduced the number of unskilled jobs in the developed world, in the US. What's getting known is that technology and globalization are reducing the number of skilled jobs. And this, a few years ago, none of us would believe that it's true. Well, those types of jobs will never leave. So people used to say, oh, America should focus on skilled jobs and innovation because those won't get outsourced. But now skilled jobs and innovation industries are popping up all over the world. When there was an article that came out with the, I'm sure some of you noticed that USA Today, that changed their format, and when they're, I don't know if they were celebrating their 30th or exactly what the year was, but they asked experts to predict the future. And one of those people that they asked was Mark Andreessen, who is the creator of Netscape and is now a very successful venture capitalist. And he said, the spread of computers and the internet will put jobs in two categories: people who tell computers what to do and people who are told by computers what to do. Let's pause and think about that for a sec. And what are the ramifications? So here's some of the ramifications of this situation, is that there's significant disruption. There is unemployment. And for millennials, some of the folks who are getting out of college right now, this is the only reality they know. Even the idea of lifelong employment at a company, you might as well be telling them that tomorrow they're going to wake up on Mars. They realize that they live in a world where there's no guarantees. The other issue is this issue where we may be saying goodbye to median income in the middle class. And this is a terrible thing. Because if you have a society where, okay, these are the people who are skilled and we only need a few of them because computers are going to tell us what to do, the unskilled folks. Or you just have this constant catering of the people here in the middle. What happens in societies where there's no middle class? Tremendous unrest. Then people really demand change. And it's not good. I mean, this is not about the type of society that we value or what is the linchpin of what makes America work. So another challenge is that there's an economic development solution to problem mismatch. And the current system for economic development was designed for a different era. It was designed when what was business? Business that we were focused on was industrial and manufacturing. Those who've been in the industry, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And the idea of economic development was simply stealing businesses domestically. You take the business from one state, you put it in yours, and it's a win. It was also part of a TV industrial complex. So how do you reach people? Well, there's ABC, NBC, CBS, done. How many people only have three? How many people only have 100 channels at their home? One person? Less than 100? You guys would be my statistical outlier, right? So now the channels are so much broader of how you communicate your message. And it was pre-globalization. Well, I mean, there's always been globalization, but not at the scale which we're seeing today. And it was also pre-women and minority executives, at least in the US. So now even the very terms and the context of how the conversations are happening are different. It isn't always the old model of, you come into town, you meet the decision makers, and they're all guys who are old. You smoke your cigars, you eat the steak, and then it's all done. Yeah, fair enough. Next May will be different. Actually, but did folks know? No, I mean, just as a point of departure from the past, if you look at the demographics of who was out last night smoking and drinking, did you notice? A little bit different. It's not all guys. There's a lot of guys, though. And it was also pre-internet, the economic development world. And how has the internet changed things? A lot. So what's happening is that we recognize that there is a different future, and we keep chasing after it, right? We try to grab the future, but in fact, it's the past that keeps holding us back. We're trying to meet the future by doing what we've done in the past, and what we did in the past that used to work doesn't work so well anymore. Another issue related to this is that this approach further alienates new people, not just to the economic development profession, but to corporate real estate, site selection, to businesses themselves. What will happen is that you alienate those who don't view history in the same way, because the history that they have is not the history that the older professionals have come up with, right? Like millennials don't get pensions. They don't get working at a company for the rest of their lives. And in the solution to problem mismatch, what's happening is that many brilliant people are told they're not brilliant because they're being measured on whether it be an academic, professional, or credential system that rewards traditional approaches and thinking over innovation. But it's only innovation that will save us. And I don't want you to be confused and think that disruption is simply being different. Being different in and of itself is not that important. Actually, this is something Dean talks about, right? So different does not equal great, or necessarily best, or necessarily success. So as you're thinking about ideas, how to improve your company, how to improve your community, one way is that you can look on the inside, but sometimes what the opportunity is to look outside of your industry for innovation or disruption, change, switches. Look at other industries that are growing. What are they doing that is valuable to what you're doing? So look outside, or let me give you another possibility, is which I encourage each of you to look inside. Not inside your profession, but inside yourself. Take a good long look in the mirror and say, this is the person who's going to come up with the next new idea to move my company or my community forward. In this competition, what I want to let you know is that there are going to be new winners and probably a lot fewer of them, because what I'm advocating is hard, and most are going to resist change, and they're going to resist disruption. And they're going to hope that retirement comes faster than change. But unless you're retiring today, this does not relate to you. My mother, I think, her idea was, well, I'm just never going to have to use this internet thing or email. But she just keeps living longer and longer and longer, and all of us are living longer, right? We may all have to work longer. So this change is on you. These disruptions are affecting your life. I encourage you to embrace these changes. But then again, change is not necessary, because survival is optional. If you don't care about your survival, just keep on doing what you're doing. And with that, I will close and thank you. Okay. Happy to take questions. Yes, Jack.
You made it seem like the old pendulums not only broken down,
So for those who couldn't hear Jack's question, he asked this issue of, so there is frequently instability or there's chaos, and then there becomes new stability, right? So it's the pendulum, as Ray was kind of referencing. And so yes, although have folks notice the rate at which this change is happening? So if this is the pendulum, and this is what we're used to, what happens when the pendulum keeps doing this, right? So this rate of disruption, creative disruption, is happening more frequently, faster. What happened when a lot of the internet companies started emerging? People didn't talk in terms of years, they talked in terms of internet years. What's an internet year? 3 months, right? So yes, I think that there's always chaos, and then things become clear, right? So there, for example, there could be a lot of companies that enter into a market, and then there's some consolidation, and you have winners and you have losers, or there's different business models, and those business models emerge, and then some people adapt to them and succeed, and then others don't. Or sometimes people pick a trend, which was only that. It was hot for the moment, and then it gets weeded out. What you all need to do is you need to be able to identify the signal from the noise, because there's more and more noise. What is the signal that helps you get to success?
Anything else? One more.
Okay.
What's the next generation of social media?
I think that what you're going to find is really as part of they talk about really the next generation of the internet, which will be connected to social media, is called the Semantic Web. And the Semantic Web is data-driven. It's highly personalized. It's very focused on you. So the internet, I use this term broadly, but companies who are on the internet, they know a lot about you. And by the behaviors that you have, they learn more and more, and they're able to provide you information that is specific to you. There's good and bad sides of this, as there is with anything. Sometimes that makes you, even though you feel like you're participating in the world, your bubble of information gets smaller and smaller. But they're also able to show you information that is specific, like I know what industry you're in, I know where you live, data that you've entered. All of that type of stuff will return a different type of web experience to you. And that will also be based on your social network and social media. Data is what's driving it, and it's the internet companies, the online companies, they're the ones, Zynga, I believe their CEO says and I may be paraphrasing, we're a data company that is disguised as a game company. Right? I mean, your behaviors in the way that you play games probably reveal some information about how you make decisions, what you value. And everybody's gathering and learning. I mean, so for example, for our clients, they have access to information that gives them a competitive advantage. They can, through using our technology, understand what the market wants, right? And does their community have it? And if they don't have it, based on data, they can go to their elected officials or their board and say, this is the change that we need to make to be able to be more competitive. Why do they know that? They know it because they have access to our data, which in fact is their data. So data, it's where I started, is that data is so pervasive and in ways that are very personal. Your experience when you go to Google is different than mine. If we type in the same search or series of words. So it is a much more customized future.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.